The yogic process is a continual journey consisting of removing inefficiencies, restrictions, and restraints, impeding the optimal flow of awareness through all life processes.
Hello and welcome to the Sutra Squad podcast, brought to you by One Deep Breath. My name is Seth Barron. I'm here with the superstar Sutra Squad, Sally Moore.
Hello.
And Sarah Paige Hall.
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, she made it.
It was a process.
It was a journey. There were many sequensive changes, and we'll talk about them all.
Friendships were tried.
Okay. We just did about almost 30 minutes of technology troubleshooting over here. So, you know, it's a privilege to be with you today. And to all of you listening.
Good times.
Watching. Sarah Paige, what's one word that describes how you feel right now?
Really? I'm relieved.
Really? Good. Sally, how about you?
Well, I've just spilled coffee everywhere, but I am blooming.
Oh, sweet, precious elixir of life.
The elixir of the morning. But I feel like I'm blooming. I'm growing.
Amazing.
Love that.
I feel like full. Like as in like not over, like I just feel like full, like the end of the year is falling into place in a very unexpectedly full way. Okay, so this week we've been doing this sort of like greatest hits for these will be technically like 10 episodes of Sutra content. And we've spent a little bit of time in each of the 4 chapters of the Yoga Sutra. The first chapter, the Samadhi Pada, that sort of describes the beginning and the end. Samadhi is transcendence, bliss, full absorption. It's the 8th and final limb on the path, the Ashtanga 8-limbed path of yoga. And then the second chapter in the Sadhana Pada, where we learned about practice and the nature of practice. And then the third chapter, the Vibhuti Pada, in which the siddhis, the powers of yoga that arise through long, dedicated, sustained, devoted practice. And then the Kaivalya Pada in the 4th chapter, which is the chapter on freedom. And then we get to these last 2 verses, and we thought we would look at them together. So we're looking at Yoga Sutra 433 and 444. Yoga Sutra 433 is the one that I will chant. I'm going to read them both in Sanskrit, and then I'll chant through 33 just because it's a little bit shorter. So verse 33, Ksana prati yogi parinama paranta nigrahya krama. And then the 34th, of course, on the opposite side of this page in the workbook I'm referencing. So this is a long one. I'm going to try to stumble through it. Here we go. Purusartha shunyanayam gunanam pratiprasava kaivalyam svarupa pratistha va chitti shaktir iti. Say that 5 times fast. But we'll go through and we'll start with 433. And if you want to join me for a moment of presence, you can sit up nice and tall. And I'm going to chant one vibration of Om. Take a deep breath in. Breathe it out. Inhale for Om. Ksana prati yogi parinama paranta nirgrahya krama Ksana Pratiyogi Parinama Paranta Nirgrahya Krama. Ksana Pratiyogi Parinama Paranta Nirgrahya Krama. So the first of these two, I'm going to reference Master Iyengar's translations from Light on the Yoga Sutra of BKS Iyengar, because I like the way he gives a very straightforward translation as of a very big idea. So Sutra 33, he translates as the mutations of the gunas cease to function, time, the uninterrupted movement of moments, stops. This deconstruction of the flow of time is comprehensible only at this final stage of emancipation. And I also really like the Jivamukti translation of this. The succession of changes, the uninterrupted sequence of moments, is only recognized as distinct moments when one has transcended these moments and is at the other end. So there's something here about how, our lives, this sutra contains one of my favorite nerdy words in Sanskrit, which is the word ksana. And that's usually translated as moment. I've heard, and I like this one, it's the smallest perceivable instant of time. And then I was reading in Master Jagannath Korea's book, Inside Patanjali's Words. He references something that's actually quite fascinating because it's a physics reference. That according to the sage Vyasa, the time it takes for an atom to move its own measure of space is called a moment, a ksana. So that's like how small. And that even the ancients had this sense of like these tiny, 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 tiny things, and they could move just one tiny, 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 tiny little bit. And that's a moment. And then at the end of this verse is another word that if you've been around yoga spaces, you might have heard before, and that's krama. And it's usually referred to, and it's useful actually as vinyasa krama. And, like for example, in the Jivamukti tradition and in many others, the term vinyasa krama is usually, it means like strict vinyasa. And by like strict vinyasa, I mean that like once you start the cue of breath from the first Surya Namaskar A at the beginning of class, every movement is cued with a breath and it does not stop until Shavasana without interruption. It's very difficult to teach. It requires a tremendous amount of expertise to deliver a full, actual integrity, like start to finish vinyasa krama. For those, it's very similar to, for the three of us share a background in the Baptiste yoga lineage, and it's very similar to like a strict journey into power, you could say, right? Like, so journey into power is the set sequence of the Baptiste yoga method. And when it's taught exactly to the letter, and I mean like with no variation, I've had this debate with several yogis recently, and I'm going to hot take I'll put out there, which is that like technically speaking, Surya Namaskar A and Surya Namaskar B have 5 breaths in downward facing dog every time. If you're not doing 5 breaths, you're doing a variation, but you are not teaching Surya Namaskar A and Surya Namaskar B. And that's not like right or wrong or good or bad. It is or it is not. A variation on it might be to have 1 breath or to have 3 breaths. And that's like entirely valid, to be clear. But if you're going to teach Journey into Power in its full integrity, in its full vinyasa krama, it's 5 sun A's, 5 breaths every time, 5 sun B's, 5 breaths in down dog every time. And so there's this sense then like Krama means like sequence. And there's this sense that like, we know it from our lived experience. Our lives are this uninterrupted series of moments. And the teaching here is that we are only capable of perceiving that sequence at the end of the sequence.
I really think that needs a little more explanation, if you don't mind, Seth. What you said there, you just said something that I would love for you to go a little deeper in.
The sequence, like the journey of that sequence we are only capable of perceiving it at the end of the sequence. So it's sort of like how, like when you're watching a movie, you can't really gauge whether it's a good movie or a bad movie, or liked it or you didn't like it. You're having a momentary experience of the movie. When the movie's over, you can like then make an assessment of like the full narrative of the film and say like, oh, I love that. I didn't love that. It was really interesting. It didn't move me. Right. Like we can't like make that assessment until it's complete.
Just like life. I don't know how many times I say that about this sequence. It is just like life. I mean, it is indeed the life cycle. You go technically from child to corpse, right? So when you say that it's like the end of the year, we're in December 31st right now, 2025. At the end of the year, I was teaching this morning, and I thought, isn't it easy to look back at all the things that didn't go right? How, look at the things that went right, as opposed to looking at the negative. So I'm sure you didn't do this by mistake. So Seth, good job. I also think it's worth, because the gunas are highly mentioned
Yeah, let's
here.
talk about the gunas. Will you remind us, what are the gunas?
I will, because I looked them up. Qualities of nature, they are sattva, rajas, and tamas. And
so they're the qualities of nature. All of Prakriti contains all three. All three are present in all Prakriti. And then tell us, so it's sattva, rajas, and tamas. And what is sattva?
I think sattva is sattva easier. I mean, I know tamastic, because you're always telling me I'm very tamastic, which is tamas.
Well, when you listen to Murder Cat podcast,
Yes.
I tell you that is tamasic content.
Yes.
What is tamasic? Let's start there, since
I'm
we're
going to
saying
say,
it.
and these are my words, and if you want to say, I'm not looking at a book around that. Tamas is like edgy or hot, or I want to say it's a rougher feel. Now you can, it's a rougher feel to it. I no longer listen to my Dateline Murder podcast on the way to yoga, because that would bring me into a tamastic, frame of mind. And that's true.
So tamas is sometimes referred to as like the mode of ignorance or darkness.
Yes. And sattvic
Right.
is,
And then let's go to the middle one, rajas.
somebody else pick it up for me, because I think I have it, but I don't. Seth, go ahead.
Yes, Alice, it's the mode of passion, the mode of action.
I always think
Right.
red. When I think of rajas, I think red, which is passionate. That's
Yeah.
So-
Like the doing.
Yes.
Right.
And sattvic
And
is
then what is
easier.
sattva?
Isn't sattva?
Easy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
easy. Like if you have something that is sattvic, food.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't say ease.
I think of
I would say
sattva as being
lightness.
equanimity, like
Equanimity, sure.
But like you have
balance.
food that
Equanimity
is,
is sattvic.
yes,
Yeah.
if you have food that is sattvic,
Yes.
like
What makes it sattvic?
it is balanced. It is,
It's balanced.
It-
it's blessed.
yes,
It's
exactly.
prepared with intention.
I know in Ayurveda,
It's-
they you eat sattvic food for your different, your different doshas, what you even out.
Yep. I don't want to get too far deep down this rabbit hole, though. So, okay.
Yes.
So sattva is the mode of goodness, or let's not say goodness. Let's say lightness, spiritual realization, clarity. Rajas, the mode of action. Tamas, the mode of darkness or ignorance. So all three in presence all the time, in constant mutation, meaning like there's the levels of the three are shifting all the time. Yogic practice helps us try to maximize the quality of sattva and minimize the quality of tamas. But then like there's this sense though that like, again, like we assess that at the end, and that there's then where we get to in verse 34 is the transcendence of that movement or mutation. And Master Iyengar translates that as Kaivalya, liberation, comes when the yogi has fulfilled the purusarthas, the fourfold aims of life, and has transcended the gunas. Aims and gunas return to their source, and consciousness is established in its own natural purity. And from Sharon Gannon and David in the Jivamukti translation, when self-realization comes, what seems like a great achievement from an individual's perspective is a non-event from the perspective of the self. All the ups and downs, struggles and joys of countless lifetimes exist on a finite level only. To the eternal, ever-present self, the one who is forever free, enlightenment is a non-event, as there was never any unenlightenment. It is all light. And so before I keep going, like, are there other translations of verse 34 that you saw or that really illuminated something for you? Speaking of light.
I have one from Unravel the Thread by Ruben Vasquez. Having fulfilled their purpose, the tendencies of natures, the gunas, return to their original state, and awareness, no longer being veiled by the activity of the gunas, abides in its own essential nature, the power of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a meaty sutra. There's so much to it.
So much.
I have one. My cat, move, go. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali by Edwin F. Bryant, not doctor, but Master Edwin F. Bryant. And
I believe he is a Bryant. Well, he's a doctor, I think, but anyway.
Okay, I give him a doctorate. Ultimate liberation is when the gunas, which we just went through, devoid of any purpose for the prusa or the seer, return to their original state. In other words, when the power of consciousness is situated in one's own essential nature. And I was looking along even deeper. I do love this translation. I like him a lot. He is heady and wordy, but he's really wonderful. Kaivalya literally means the state of Kaivalya, or aloneness, onlyness, one's own ness, not connected with anything elseness. In other words, Purusa, the seer awareness, is now absorbed exclusively in its own nature as Purusa and completely uncoupled from even the highest and finest states of pure chitta or buddhi. And I think what I love about that is I live alone. I think we all kind of do. Sally, you have grandchildren and children that come traipsing in and out, but he makes this seem and feel like aloneness is such a blessing, that it is a state of being that is, I don't mind being alone. I love it. I was even saying to Seth sometime this week, I said, there is nothing I love more than taking myself out for a nice sushi meal by myself. And I think some people look at it and they're like, there's no way I could go by myself. There's no way I could go to dinner by myself. There's no way I could take myself out by myself. I don't have a problem with it. And I kind of feel validated, I guess is not the right word, but in a way it's like, it's not a bad thing. It's a state of being that is really lovely, that is in equanimity. Now it's not for everybody, obviously. I lived 30 years with a lot of chaos. And in that moment, now that I'm not, it's like, yeah, I really love this. Go ahead.
But this right there, that's verse 433.
Yeah.
Right? That you recognize there was a series of moments.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
And then at the end of that series, you look back and can say, oh, that was this. That was like this era. That was this time.
This season of my life.
Sure. And you can then see it with like when you're in it, it's too close. You are only capable of abiding in that aloneness at its completion. And again, aloneness here isn't a disconnected aloneness. It's actually a deeply interconnected aloneness. And this is where there's like a really fascinating paradox in this to really like sit with and chew on, in that, like, because the interconnectedness is that there's a resting and abiding in the truth of that without needing it to be validated or proven. It's known. And so, like, it does not require an external point of validation.
I have a story about being alone. I've never been to a movie or a meal by myself in my life. And my family and I are making these bingo cards this year, like for 2026. What do you want to do? And I'm going to put down, go out for a meal from your own, because when I was listening to you talk, I think when in my head I make a story about aloneness and I haven't taken the time to turn inward, we're all connected. We're never alone. And so it's like, how do I get comfortable and not create the story? Because I don't think twice when I see people at a restaurant by themselves, physically. Not twice, but I have this story on top of me that it means that I got divorced, that I wasn't wanted. And so I think that's where this liberation comes when we take that inward journey and remember that we are connected to everything.
Yes. And that you don't need anyone else to prove it to you. You don't need any reason, explanation, validation, or that it is like self-realized. It is like whole and complete.
Exactly. Because how often have I sat at a meal that I didn't really want to be at a big ass table, feeling so separate and so alone. So this is the little tweaks, right? And this is when the gunas can subside a little bit so they're not overactive in one direction or the other.
Right.
And we
they're
can get
all that sattva, rajas, tamas swirling around.
Then we can figure out that I can feel very alone I actually regularly feel very alone in a big party. It's not my preference to be in a big party. And I probably at times also feel very connected when I am alone. So it's like that to me is the gunas showing up in the moment to veil up what's really here.
I love how this is so interconnected. That's 33 and 34. It's like, it's really, it's, you know, I'm sitting here listening to you, Sally. And for me personally, I'm a very introverted extrovert. Anytime I go to a party, I have my escape hatch planned. I'm probably going to be there about an hour, unless it's 1-to-1. If it's 1-to-1, like here, you and, you know, three of us could all talk for hours. It's very different. And though, I'm going to press click and say, see you next week, and be really comfortable. I have an escape hatch planned. I'm always going to go out at about an hour. That's my social. And it used to be, I didn't feel like I could do that. And now, or I felt like I had to be the life of the party. I felt like I had to be the loudest, the funniest, the this, the most, the that. And when I really came to the point of, I hate that. And I don't like to use the word hate, but that was the way it was. I'm much more comfortable saying, thank you so much. This was lovely. See you next year, you know, and I'm good with that.
I was thinking about it a lot. I was at an event with a friend that I've had for a long time, but there was lots of people there and there's all kinds of stories in the background of my head. These people used to go to the studio where I teach and they don't go there anymore. Like there's all this stuff. But I was actually watching myself at this event saying, I know how to do the party. I know how to show up and chat. I know how to do the party. From the outside, people might think it's all super easy and doesn't require a ton of energy. But I kept saying to myself, can you be in the party? Can you just be in the party? And that's what, to me, I'm going to share one more thing I shared just before we started recording that I thought was amazing from the summary from chapter 4 from Unravel the Thread. It's so good. And to me, that's this continuous cycle. So he was summarizing chapter 4, Ruben Vasquez, and this was just the first line. And it says, the yogic process is a continual journey consisting of removing inefficiencies, restrictions, and restraints, impeding the optimal flow of awareness through all life processes.
Yeah. I mean, like it's, you know, we sometimes use turns of phrases in practice, like burn away what gets in the way. Right? That like the heat of tapas is is a process of turning in to remove those obstacles, right? Like, and if we think about even how beautifully bookmarked the Yoga Sutra, or bookended the texts are, because we start with Atha Yoga Anushasanam, now is yoga. Yoga's-chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the restraint of the swirl of our mind, or when we cease to identify with our thoughts. And Tadadrastu Svarupe Vastanam, so that the seer dwells in their truest nature and true splendor. And then we end that we are only capable of perceiving change, or we are only capable of perceiving a shift at the end of a sequence. And that is when the movement of the gunas, the modes of material nature, that the material world in and of itself is transcended. It is no longer needed to validate or to give a context for, because there is a sense of abiding in that true self, the seer in its own true nature.
Another thing I'm thinking about that I've definitely heard in my trainings, Baptiste trainings, was about being more childlike and less childish. That's can I be I watch my grandkids curious and, touching the wall. What's hot water? What's cold water? What's ice? What happens if you put ice on the hot thing versus and that's been really helpful to me. Is right now, is all this mind chatter childlike or childless? Is it curious or is it punitive?
I have to tell you, that was my experience. Nobody knows that we spent 30 minutes with my computer from all over the world. Yeah, you all know. And I know too. I know. And, this is Seth's second language. Working with the computer is his second language. It's about my seventh, and I still don't have it really good. Here's the thing. For the first time that this happened, because this is not the first time, dear listener, that this has happened. And I'm like, what is it about, I'm doing all the things, but this was the first time. And you said childish or childlike. At the beginning of this journey that we've been taking on, it would have freaked me out. And I would have probably been like, I can't. And today I was like, no, I'm not sweating. I'm fine. It's not my fault. I know that I did what I was supposed to do. Maybe it is my fault, but if it is, that's okay too, because we're going to work it out and it's going to be fine. And I was really, at the end of it, I remember Seth says, do you need to take some breaths? I'm like, no, I'm good.
You took breath.
You recovered really well.
I did. It's like, we're going to get it worked out one way or the other. So there's that growth, that I did not have a tantrum, but I just sort of looked at it and said, okay, I'm going to click the button he says to click. Okay, I'll do that. Let's try it on again. Not getting freaked out. That is something that I've learned a lot through these studies, is not getting freaked out. Something that Master Bryant talks about a lot is liberation. And I'm sure that he goes that all of the, I have all the books, but I haven't looked at all of them as deeply as his for this week. I love the idea of aloneness being liberation and liberating. And I think, how often do we use the word liberation or liberated? What do we need to be liberated from? Or do we?
Right. Well, it's that freedom to and freedom from.
Yes.
Well, and liberation for me might be really being vulnerable and participating in a conversation when I'm with others. And liberation could be remember that I'm connected to the earth, the breath, the trees. If I'm experiencing alone, neither is good or bad, once again, but can there be a liberation from the gunas? I guess it is, over and over again.
Yeah, it is. It is right. It's freedom from the inevitable suffering of the material world, right? That the inevitable, right? And that it's freedom to be whoever the F you think you are or want to be in this moment right now, and that it can change, and we can't see the change while we're in the change. We see it on the other side, and that every cycle of that change maybe lets us like let go a little bit, lets us start to loosen the grip on the material world, so we can start to see with more clarity toward the spiritual, toward the from Prakriti toward Purusa.
Well, and I love how nature can be such a teacher, because I was thinking once again about the like marking of endings and beginnings.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's the sunset or the date, New Year's. For me, my birthday's coming, a birthday. Like there's these outward obvious endings and then there's beginnings. But I was thinking about, it goes back to my divorce a lot. And I thought that I was thinking about this week in preparation for this discussion. And I was like, wow, I've really accepted that my kids' dad and I got together to create them. And I love them. I wouldn't change anything about them. I'm glad I didn't know how this was going to end. And there's another side though, because I have been like, there was a huge relief when I finally was like, look, we came together to create these human beings that I love dearly. And I'm so blessed to now have a next generation that still required us to be together to start this path. But one discovery I had about endings is so that to me was an acceptance that created liberation and freedom from the pain of the divorce. But it's not all gone. I'm still triggered by it. But you know what I realized, what I didn't work through was, for me personally, the dream of what I thought this marriage was going to be. So there was a part that got stuck in me, stuck on my heart. I still think there's fragments stuck. They're not far enough away that it just came to me. And the minute it came to me, I felt a lightness starting to come in. And I was like, oh, I had little kids and I moved forward with taking care of them. But I don't think I took the pause to say, oh, this dream that doesn't exist, but it was a dream on the day I got married about what my future would look like. I didn't take the time to turn inward and probably take care of my little 21-year-old self who got married. I just realized like, oh, I think this is why this is still so sticky. When it gets triggered, it's sticky because there's remnants that haven't been like, oh, you best you could, and that was a dream. And it didn't
You're
really
literally describing samskara.
Yeah, I was going to say that's samskara.
it just
It's
was
literally past impression, like right old, like the echo, the past impression.
And that's where you can't bypass, like it's more like I thought, oh yes, okay, these kids had to be here for this reason and everything's fine. Well, it wasn't all of it. There was more of it that's still haunting 30 years later. And so this interesting thing is when these endings come, like this inward journey to get back to flow, and it might happen over 30 years, and it might happen over 100 years, and it might happen over 5 minutes.
I was going to say 30 seconds.
Yeah.
All of it. Yeah.
3 seconds.
So but it really is like, I think if the scars keep showing up or something keeps triggering this reoccurring event, because the minute I have some distance about it, I can still say, oh, pain, but I don't need to keep reliving the pain, I can just see the pain.
I literally was having this moment yesterday, and I won't share the details because I don't know if the person involved is ever going to listen to this, but I don't want to, but I had a moment of being really like something that a year ago I would have been really upset about. I would have been like all kinds of turned up about it. And instead, when I first heard, I actually started laughing. That was my first reaction. I just laughed. And then I had a pang of sadness about it. And then I remembered that, it's not about me. It's not for me. It's not my choice. It's not about anything I did or didn't do. And I thought instead, okay, well, what do I want that I'm not getting here? Right? What I want is attunement. What I want is consideration, care, and compassion. And where do I need to turn how do I both turn inward and say, oh, Seth, yeah, you get to feel that, like that you get to feel that pang of pain, and right? And outward, because I'm not getting those feelings here. So where can I turn to reconnect into those feelings? And it just so happened that like I had plans to I went to a concert last night, with one of my best friends, and like music that PS like is not my music at all. But it's like a big deal of a show. This I can say and name, like it's, I went to see Fish at Madison Square Garden last night, and like, I'm not a jam band queen. Like, it's just not my jam. It's just not my jam. You know, we could talk electronic music. We could talk other genres. Jam band is just not like, and let me be clear too. Like, I want, because, I know he loves it, and I just wanted to go and like bask in his joy. And I wanted to go with him, because it's like he's been going to Fish shows for 30 years. And I realized that, and I had said yes. I was like, what I was saying yes to was mudito, right? By the way, if you remember the Locks and the Keys, 133, right? Sympathetic joy, the joy we experience with. And I was like, oh, I can like I literally was like, oh, I put that into practice. And so I knew in the moment, I was like, okay, yesterday afternoon, I'm like, I'm having this moment and it hurts. But I also had this moment of thinking like, wow, like this year has been a hell of a ride, ups and downs. Nothing expected is what occurred. A lot of growth, and growth is inherently uncomfortable. So there's been a lot of discomfort. And I thought about how like I can see those shifts now where I stand. I can see that like a year ago, I would have really like internalized that experience of the pain and what feels like rejection, and felt like it was mine to be responsible for, as opposed to where I stand now and say, like that does hurt. It's okay that it hurts. And so I can both nurture myself and seek nurturing. Right. It was so nurturing, even though again, like I literally didn't know a single song. But if you're ever at a stadium show with fans, right? Like Fish has a fan base that is like so passionate and devoted. There were people singing every word of every song. Madison Square Garden was lit the F up. And even though it's not like my thing, there's something so amazing about being in it and like feeling the flow of that, and then turning to my left and seeing like my best friend who's just like in a moment of like full transcendent joy, and being able to just like bask in that. And I thought to myself like, yeah, this, cause it both felt a little bit alone. Cause I'm like nobody knows that I don't know what the hell's going on here. It's like, I felt like I was sort of in drag at the show. I was like, you know, okay, hippies, cool. And deeply connected.
But you know, it's so funny. One of the things I was discovering, and as I was thinking about this, and I think your example is perfect, is for me, sometimes when I travel, I mean, when I study the Yoga Sutras, I feel open to flow and new points of view, not so stuck in mine. But I also thought when I'm traveling or somewhere I don't know where I am and the road is different, it really helps me, kind of what you were explaining, like get into the present moment. Watching all these people, noticing, like, to be honest, for all you know, the three people next to you were having your same experience, but you probably looked like you really belonged there, and you're a regular, and it's your 40th times. Yeah, but you know what I mean? So it's like I love stepping out of the routine to recognize all this.
But isn't that what we do in yoga, in the asana practice of yoga?
Yes, exactly.
You're stepping out of that comfort zone. You're doing something different. Maybe, you know?
Yeah, you're putting your body in a weird shape and seeing how you respond to it.
And even if it's the 800th or the first time you've ever done chair, It's different in that moment. The body is totally responding to it in a different way. And that's the beautiful thing of the asana practice. I want to reference this because I love the granddaddy. I love the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali by Satchitananda. I think we would have been friends. But he goes into this. He says, now, if we go all the way back to the very beginning of the Yoga Sutras, the second sutra in the first book says, Yoga Chitti Vritti Nirodha. Restraining the modifications of the mind stuff is yoga, which is what we're talking about right now, the mind stuff, right? The Chitta Vritti and blah, blah, blah. He goes on. And then the entire 4 books are the explanation of these 2 sutras. The second one was Tadadrushta Svarupe.
Tadadrastu Svarupe Vastanam.
Yeah, thank you. That's one thing I'll do better. And the seer rests in its own state. The entire 4 books are the explanation of these 2 sutras. Chitta Vritti Nirodha is the practice. Svarup. Okay, can you say it for me? Svarup.
Svarupe.
Tadastam. Am I right?
Avastanam.
Thank you. Svarupe adastanam.
Tadadrastu, the seer, Svarupe, Avastanam, abides in its own true splendor.
Avastanam is the experience. That's why he talks about the experience at the end, in the completion. You rest, he goes, you just rest in your own true nature. You have played your games, you have gotten all your experiences, and now you're resting.
Right. And then to be clear, I'm not claiming some like grand evolution. I'm just saying I had a moment of recognizing some of my own growth and saying that like, I can just stand in what I'm in right now. And it doesn't have to be so much effort. It actually feels like less effort. Like, right. It like, I've like swimming, you know what's effortful is swimming upstream. What's effortful is trying to convince yourself of something is the way that it should be. Right? Like that's like the, like in the the Eightfold Noble Path of Buddhism, like it's like right effort is one of the principles, right? Right? Like right effort, right livelihood, right speech, right thought, but like right effort or action is the discernment of like, there's effort in flow. And we know what that feels like. And there's effort upstream against the flow. And we know what that feels like. Effort against the flow feels like expectations. Feels like should. Feels like want, need, hope, bypassing totally.
Well, and it also feels like, to me, bypassing. I think Bethany says something a lot about the hard road is the easy road. I can't remember exactly what she says, but it is funny because working to bypass what just
oh my God, it's so much effort. Right? Well, like think about how much time and energy have we could each tell stories about something along these lines for what I'm going to say here. How much effort it takes to reject what you know, to try and deny what you know to be true.
So say it again for the people in the back.
Okay. How much effort have you spent denying what you know to be true and trying to make it so? And it never works. And you're right? Like you feel like all 3 of us like physically tensed up if you're just listening, as opposed to like the effort of surrender to what you know to be true. And surrender, like not surrender the way we code it in like Western culture as like defeat. Surrender as like abiding in acceptance. Surrender is that moment. And like, this is where like alcoholics talk about having to get to rock bottom, or where it's that you get to a point where you're so, and I think this is part of my journey this year. And again, on the other side, at this side of it, I can stand and see it, that like I had to do all that. I had to like, cause like sometimes, and it's also why sometimes like your best like handstand in class is the last series of the drills, because you have no more resistance to the fear. You have no more, like you've exerted all of the effort. I want this person to be like that. I want their hair to be like this. I want them to act this way. I deserve, they should, I'm pounding my fist on the table. Sometimes we just have to like, I wish it was different. If you know how to do it different, like please come and be a guest on our podcast in 2026. Call me. If you know how to do this different, please. Seth at onedeepbreath.com. Call me. I want to learn from you. But really, most of us jerks out here in the real world, you have to get like, there's a point at which, and it's cyclical, but like we have to like get exhausted of our own bullshit.
Yep.
True.
In order to say, you know what? Maybe I just need to let go of that bullshit.
And when you finally look at it and you go, this is not working.
And it's that moment on the other side of those moments where we can transcend the movement of the material modes of nature and just say like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to deny what I know to be true. And then there's that moment of transcendence, of surrender, of deep flow. That's like, and it's a turning in and it's a connected with.
I have to reference something here. I have to. I am not a Swiftie, except now I think I am, because I know it's going to be okay. But I watched her like the Eras Tour thing. And she was talking about, now we all know that she's engaged to Travis Kelce. And it was the engagement I did not know this country needed. There was a time when we all got very happy for this person that we do not know. And chances are we never will,
May they live well and be happy
May they
together.
will, yes. Anyway, so literally it's just sort of my number one Spotify hit was yoga music, was kirtan. So I don't listen to popular music very often. So I did watch this, I had time. So I was watching the 6 episodes. There was an episode where she said that she had broken up with her 6-year relationship. She had broken up with another relationship. And her mother said, this is not working. Here is this guy that's clearly wanting to meet you. And she goes, but I don't go out with athletes. I don't know anything about sports. So she met him. They're engaged. She went against, it wasn't working. Whatever she was doing, the tons of people she was dating. I know it's a very simplistic, but it's true. And I remember listening to her mother say, this isn't working. What you have been doing isn't working. And I don't know if last time I talked to Taylor, she said, that it was revolutionary to her. But, I don't know that Taylor in our deep conversations had ever noticed that was not working for her.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things. I know, Seth, you have done this for me, Sarah Page, let's look at it a different way,
Yeah.
And if you keep, what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over
and again and expecting different results.
It's not working, Yogi.
Yeah.
Try something different. Step into that unknown. Go into.
Nothing changes if nothing changes.
And that's tapas. That discipline, that creates fear and heat. And then all of a sudden you get to the end of the year and you're like, oh, that was okay.
Yeah.
That was a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I lived. It's like when you're in a really hard pose and you just take one more breath and you stay and you realize like, oh, I didn't die. Oh, cool. My arm didn't fall off. Wasn't sure for a moment there, but it's still attached. And and then you rest. Right? Then you have a moment of abiding in your splendor.
Another thing I was thinking about real quick was like there's the new year and the birthday, like whatever these big outward beginning and ends. But then I feel like the practice for me is daily reintroducing myself to me, if that means anything, because I feel like so many things, so many ways I live are exactly that. Like they're unchecked rules I have about, I don't know how to pick the right guy for me. I don't know how to, but what if I just was in the practice of meeting myself every day? And that meant that I don't have to have outdated rules. I just keep moving toward my heart's deepest yearning.
All right, Sally, that's a perfect place to take us, to start to bring us home. So every week we offer an inquiry and we offer a teaching tip. So we'll start with an inquiry for the week. Sarah Page, what's an inquiry? And for those of you listening, take these however you want. You could journal on them. You could just think about them. You could write them down or not.
My inquiries are usually spur of the moment because I like to base them on what we've spoken about. And so my inquiry would be, where do you need to give yourself some rest and grace? Where are you still trying so hard to make it be a certain way and look a certain way when you know that maybe where do you need to put the ease? Where do you need to rest? And by rest, I don't necessarily mean lay down or whatever, or maybe that is it. But where do you need to rest?
Well, and kind of in line with that, I like to put compassionate in front of inquiry. Like if I'm in the state of willing to be compassionate, like that's a good time for me to practice inquiry. But I was like, can you make time to get curious about the life you're living? Not necessarily labeling as good or bad, but just checking in and maybe notice how have your priorities shifted through your practice, through your life, through the year? And how might you access more presence if you became aware of and then liberated from the mind chatter?
Yeah, I'll just offer like an invitation to pay attention to like the beginning and end, like the end and the beginning. One of my favorite like meditations for this week. Bring your attention to breath, and in particular, notice the edges of the breath. How you come into a moment of fullness at the top of the inhale, and how you come into a moment of emptiness in the bottom of the exhale, and to like intentionally like just soften the edges. So sometimes you're in a class and you hear students like, right? You can hear like there's like almost a glottal sound, like it's like a very sharp edge to the breath. And especially once you get people moving with music or without. And I think there's something just really beautiful about intentionally putting attention on the space between and how we come into and out of that space. And can we come into and out of it easefully? And I think that just sort of like expands out sort of like a fractal, right? Like, can we come to the end of the year and can we come in easefully and acknowledge like what was is what was, and it is not what is, and it is not what will be. And that there's like, let go of the resistance to that, because what was will never be again. So we're not going back to the way things were, because that's not how time works. Whenever I hear somebody say, like, it's actually one of the saddest things to me now, when I hear somebody say, I just wish it was like the way it was. Well, you're gonna, I mean, talk about setting yourself up for suffering, because nothing is. Now, like, you can notice that's very different from saying like, like that felt like this is what I felt, or this is what I took from that moment and it felt nourishing. And so I'm going to seek that nourishment. That's very different than I wish it could just be the way that it was. Right. So like, and again, I think when you start with the breath, I think when you start with like feeling into, because breath is a moment. Every breath has this complete cycle until it doesn't. And then we're out of here. And I just love that. I just think that like, I just love that practice. So, and it's a teaching tip. What's something you could offer for this, Sarah Page?
Well, I've been working with tapas all week, which I really loved, as not a point of heat, but as a point of discipline. And how can you find it? Listen, we all three teach hot classes, so that's a moot point, but not external, but internal heat. We could turn off the heat and do a full JIP and still sweat like buckets. So, but look at tapas in your own, in class, and offer it up too, because what happens on your mat happens in life. You can always offer it up as how do you bring that discipline that you bring so, with so much force from your mat, that tapas, into your life? Where are you not transferring that? Where is it that you need to bring more power and more, concentration, more discipline into your life? Where is that difficult, and why? The why is very important. So that's what I would do. I've had a good time with it.
I was inviting like really experience the posture, experience the moment, in the moment, through maybe pressing or leaning into your foundation, different than gripping, grasping, or hanging on. Experience a moment by standing in the moment.
Yeah, another one that I offered, just think it's really interesting. Like invite students to just like in a moment of stillness. It doesn't have to be a super formal meditation. Just check in with yourself on how do you feel right now, at the beginning of class. Like, just how do you feel right now? Without fixing it, changing it, managing it, handling it. Just how do you feel right now? And at the end of class, how do you feel right now? Maybe it's the same, maybe it's different. But the changes are only perceivable at the end of the sequence, right? And inevitably that turning in is how we begin to let those mutations start to settle, and that we can turn toward something bigger.
Yay. Yeah.
We did it.
What a blessing, right?
Right.
What a blessing.
Yeah. So we'll begin again when we reconvene for our next episode on the beginning of the beginning. Until then, I'm so grateful for you, Sally, and for you, Sarah Page. I truly love you both with my whole heart.
Same.
And we're so grateful to all of you for watching and or listening. Please like, subscribe, leave us a review. And if you found any value and think somebody else in your life might find value, consider sharing this with someone you love. We love you, and thank you so much. We'll be with you again very soon.